"Hurry up, lady. You're holding up the line," the store manager snapped, his voice cutting to the checkout hum. The elderly woman looked up, her hands trembling as she placed bread and milk on the counter. "I'm moving as fast as I can. Son, a little patience won't hurt you." His lip curled. "Patience? You people always have excuses." Before anyone could react, his hand cracked across her face. The store went silent, gasps echoing. She steadied herself, eyes sharp now. "You'll regret this." 15 minutes later, she returned, flanked by power no one in that store expected. Carl Peterson, store manager, self-appointed king of the aisles. He thrived on making others feel small. And right now, this frail black woman, no taller than his shoulder, had become his target. "Patience?" Carl scoffed, his voice rising loud enough for the line of waiting customers to hear. "You people always have excuses, always slowing everyone down." A ripple of unease spread through the crowd. The young mother, too, places back, pulled her daughter close, whispering in her ear. A teenage cashier froze mid-scan, his hand trembling, eyes darting nervously. A man near the back frowned but said nothing. The elderly woman pressed her lips together, but she didn't bow her head. Her voice quivered only slightly. "That's uncalled for. Respect is free, you know." Carl leaned over the counter, his voice dripping with venom. "Respect? From you? Don't make me laugh." And then, with a suddenness that stunned everyone, his hand whipped across her cheek. Slap! The sound rang through the store like a gunshot. Apples tumbled from her bag, rolling across the tile. A carton of milk burst open, spilling white across the floor. The woman staggered, clutching her cheek. Gasps echoed. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Another murmured, "Did he just?" But the words caught in their throat. A little girl began to cry, her mother shushing her quickly, though her own eyes glistened with outrage. The elderly woman steadied herself. Slowly, she straightened, her hand still pressed to the red mark blooming on her face. But her eyes burned now. She didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She didn't even raise her voice. "You'll regret that." Her words sliced through the silence sharper than his slap. Carl faltered. For just a second, his smirk slipped, but then he forced a laugh, puffing up his chest. "Yeah? What are you gonna do, Grandma? Call the cop? Good luck with that." The woman bent down carefully, gathering her fallen apples one by one. Her hands no longer shook. She placed them neatly into her bag, ignoring the spreading pool of milk at her feet. She didn't look at Carl again. She didn't say another word. She turned and walked out the store, her steps slow but steady, her head high. Every pair of eyes followed her. Not one person dared speak. The slaps still echoed. The humiliation hung thick in the air. Carl chuckled, though the sound rang hollow in his own ears. He waved a hand dismissively. "What are you all staring at? Show's over. Back to shopping." Outside, Evelyn Monroe sat in her car for a moment, her fingers lightly touching the sting on her cheek. She had lived through much worse. Segregation, prejudice, betrayal. She had built her life on strength, not pity. And yet, something about this man's arrogance, his certainty that she was powerless, it struck a chord deeper than anger. It demanded action. She reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number she rarely used. When the line picked up, her voice was calm, controlled, and absolute. "It happened," she said simply. "Come to the store. Bring the team. Now." She ended the call, slipped the phone back into her bag, and waited. Her heartbeat slowed, her breathing steadied. This wasn't anger. It was justice. Inside, whispers spread like wildfire. "He hit her. Did you see that?" "Yeah, and he didn't even care." "Wait, wasn't that?" "I swear I've seen her before." "She's somebody, isn't she?" Carl overheard, rolling his eyes. "She's nobody. Just some old lady trying to get attention. Forget it. Keep moving." But his words rang hollow even to him. Minutes dragged by. 10, 11, 12. The air grew thick, as though the entire store were holding its breath. Employees avoided Carl's gaze. Customers whispered, and the atmosphere buzzed with invisible electricity. At the 15-minute mark, the automatic door slid open. Everyone turned. The elderly woman walked back in. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her marched 3 individuals in sharp, tailored suits. Their steps were precise, their gazes cutting, their very presence radiating authority. One carried a briefcase. Another clutched a clipboard. The third already had a phone in hand. Speaking in clipped tone, the crowd parted instinctively. Cashiers stood straighter. Customers craned their neck. Evelyn Monroe strode forward, head high, eyes locked on Carl. The redness on her cheek was still visible, but her dignity was untouchable. She stopped in front of him. The suited professionals flanked her, scanning the room, jotting notes, snapping pictures. "Carl Peterson," she said, her voice clear and commanding. Carl forced a laugh, though his throat tightened. "What is this Some kind of show. You bring your friends to scare me. Evelyn's lips curled into the faintest smile. You slapped the wrong woman today. Carl blinked. What are you talking about? Who even are you? The murmurs in the store swelled. Recognition flickered on the faces of some customers. A cashier covered her mouth, whispering, "No way, that's her?" Evelyn stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "My name is Evelyn Monroe. I don't just shop in this, I own it. In fact, I own every single store in this chain." The room erupted in gas. Employees froze. Customers stared. A bag boy dropped a jar of pasta sauce, the glass shattering unnoticed on the floor. Carl's face drained of color. You own? Yes. Evelyn cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. And in the next 5 minutes, Carl, you won't own your job or your reputation. The suits behind her moved like a unit. One snapped photos of the milk stain on the floor and the terrified faces of customers. Another asked employees for their names, their statement. A third pulled paperwork from a briefcase. The pages crisp and final. Carl stammered, "Now wait. Let's not overreact." She was slowing down the line, causing a scene. "Enough." Evelyn's voice cracked through the air like thunder. "I stood here quietly, and you humiliated me. You struck me. You used words soaked in hate. You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected every customer in this building, every employee under your supervision, and the very name of this company. That ends now." Carl's mouth flapped open, but no words came. Sweat trickled down his temple. Around him, employees exchanged glances, hopeful, nervous, almost relieved. For years, they had endured his bullying. Now, at last, justice had walked through the doors. Evelyn turned, her gaze sweeping across the assistant managers clustered near the back. Their clipboards shook in their hand, their eyes wide with panic. "And as for the rest of you," she said coldly, "effective immediately, this management team is terminated. Every last one of you who allowed this man to run this store unchecked is done." Gasps again. A young assistant manager blurted, "But Mrs. Monroe, we—" "Silent," Evelyn snapped, her tone leaving no room for argument. "If you watched and did nothing, you're as guilty as he is." The word struck like a hammer. Carl swayed slightly, his knees weakening. The arrogance that fueled him for years melted into desperation. He reached across the counter, his voice cracking. "Please, Mrs. Monroe, I didn't mean it was a mistake." Evelyn's eyes burned into him. "A mistake is forgetting to ring up an item. A mistake is giving the wrong chain. What you did was a choice, a deliberate act of cruelty." She paused, letting the silence swallow him whole. Then, softly but firmly, she added, "And choices have consequences." The suits handed her a folder. She opened it, glanced at the documents inside, and signed her name with one swift stroke. She didn't even look at Carl as she spoke the next word. "Security will escort you out. Effective immediately, you're fired." The store erupted. Customers murmured in shock and approval. Employees exchanged wide-eyed looks. For the first time in years, they saw Carl without power, without control. Carl tried one last time, his voice pitiful now. "Please, I need this job. I've got bills. I've got—" Evelyn finally looked him dead in the eye, her voice steady and cold. "So did I, Carl. For decades. I worked harder than you could ever imagine, and I built this company on respect, something you will never understand." Carl's lips trembled, his shoulders sagged. He knew it was over, and everyone else knew this was only the beginning. Carl's face had gone pale, his once smug expression now hollow, defeated. Security officers flanked him, their hands resting firmly on his arms as they prepared to escort him out. He tried to pull away, his voice breaking. "Wait, please, this isn't fair." Evelyn Monroe's gaze didn't waver. Her voice cut clean through the din of whispers and murmurs. "Fair? Fair would have been treating me like any other customer. Fair would have been respect. But you chose arrogant. You chose violent. And now, you're reaping the harvest of your choices." The crowd of customers and employees seemed to inhale those words. Some nodded quietly. Others exchanged glances of relief. Carl's pleas turned desperate. "I've given this store 15 years of my life. I ran this place. I kept it in line." Evelyn tilted her head slightly, almost pitying him. "No, Carl, you didn't run this store. You poisoned it, and it ends today." With a sharp nod from her, the guards moved. Carl was dragged toward the automatic doors, his feet stumbling, his voice breaking into incoherent protests. Customers watched silently, some even clapping softly as the doors swallowed him and he vanished into the parking lot. The assistant managers still huddled by the service desk, their faces pale, their clipboards trembling in their hands. Evelyn's eyes swept over them like a storm cloud, stepped forward, she commanded. Hesitation froze them in place, until one finally took a nervous step, then another, until all four stood in a shaky line before her. "How long have you worked under Carl?" she asked the first, a young man barely in his 20s. "3 years, he whispered. "And how many times did you watch him belittle customers, berate employees? How many times did you excuse it, because it was easier to stay silent?" The young man's throat bobbed. He said nothing. Evelyn turned to the next, a woman in her 30s who clutched her clipboard like a shield. "And you? How many times did you defend him in meeting? How many times did you nod while he broke the very code of conduct this company was built on?" Her lips trembled. Tears pooled in her eyes. I needed the job," she stammered. Evelyn's tone hardened. "So did every cashier he humiliated. So did every stock boy he yelled at until they quit. But they didn't have the power you had. You were management. You were supposed to protect them. Instead, you chose silence." The woman dropped her gaze, shame flooding her face. One by one, Evelyn called them out. Each excuse crumbled under the weight of her word. Their silence, their complicity. It had allowed Carl's reign of cruelty to thrive. Finally, she straightened. Her voice rang out across the store, carrying to every corner. "Effective immediately, every member of this management team is terminated. You will not collect another paycheck under my company's name." The words landed like thunder. Gasps rippled. The assistant managers sagged, their faces hollow. "Leave your clipboards," Evelyn said coldly, "and go." They shuffled toward the doors, their heads bowed, their footsteps heavy with defeat. Customers watched in stunned silence. Employees with wide eyes. For years, those managers had strutted with Carl, untouchable. Now they were nothing. When the doors closed behind them, Evelyn turned. Her eyes softened as she looked at the stunned faces of the workers who remained. The cashiers, the stock clerks, the janitors, the bag boys. They stared back at her, unsure. Was this the moment she'd turn her wrath on them too? Or was it something else? She stepped forward, her voice lower now, steady but warm. "How many of you felt powerless under Carl's rule?" Hands slowly rose, first one, then several, until nearly every employee in sight had their hand raised. Some even raised both, tears forming in their eyes. Evelyn nodded. "I know what that feels like. I know the weight of silence. I grew up in a world where my voice wasn't supposed to matter, where people like me were told to stay quiet, to stay in our place." Her words sank deep into them. A cashier in her 50s wiped at her eyes. A young man's stocking shelves clenched his fists, his jaw tight with emotion. "But I built this company," Evelyn continued, "not with silence, with strength, with respect, with fairness. That is what these stores were meant to stand for. And today we take it back." The room pulsed with energy. Employees straightened, chest swelling, hope flickering alive for the first time in years. Evelyn turned to her team of suited professionals. "Bring me the files." They opened their briefcases and clipboards, pulling out thick binders and stacks of paper. Evelyn began flipping through them with sharp, practiced motion. "From this day forward," she announced, "this store will be under new leadership, a leadership built from within, by those who endured, by those who deserve it." Gasps erupted. She looked at the timid teenage cashier, the one who had frozen during the slap. "You, what's your name?" David," he stammered. "David." Evelyn said firmly, "I watched you stand tall even when you were scared. Fear is human, but integrity is what you choose after fear. Congratulations, you're promoted to floor supervisor, effective today." David's eyes widened, his mouth falling open. "Me? But I..." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Yes, you. Because you care. And that's what this company needs." The employees burst into applause, the sound echoing through the aisles. Customers even joined in, clapping, nodding approvingly. Evelyn moved on, pointing to others. "You, who worked here 7 years without recognition, you'll lead the stock team now. You, who stayed late every night cleaning up after their mess, you'll be head of customer service." Each announcement was met with cheers, gasped, even tears. One woman covered her mouth and sobbed openly, overwhelmed by the sudden reversal of fate. Carl had built his empire on fear. Evelyn was building hers on respect, right before their eyes. Word spread like wildfire beyond the wall. Customers pulled out their phone, recording the scene, uploading clips to social media. Within minutes, hashtags lit up timeline. Hashtag justice at the store. Hashtag Evelyn Monroe. Hashtag respect win. By the time the assistant managers reached the parking lot, the videos had already gone viral. Inside, Evelyn walked down the aisles, speaking directly to employees and customers alike. Her presence wasn't just commanding, it was transformative. She stopped at the mother with the little girl who had cried earlier. Kneeling slightly, Evelyn touched the girl's cheek gently. "Don't ever be afraid to speak up, sweetheart. Silence only feeds bullies. Always remember your voice matters." The mother's eyes shone. Thank you for showing her that." Evelyn nodded, then turned to the room at large. "This isn't about me. This is about us. This company belongs to every customer who walks through these doors and every employee who makes it run. And no one, not Carl, Not anyone will take that away again. Applause thundered. For the first time in years, the store wasn't just a place to buy groceries. It was a place of dignity. Meanwhile, Carl sat in his car in the parking lot, his face in his hands, his world crumbling. Through the windshield, he could see customers applauding Evelyn, employees embracing one another, relief washing over them. He realized too late the power he had underestimated. Not just Evelyn Monroe, the owner of the chain, but the quiet power of respect, of justice, of integrity. For Carl, the chapter was over. For Evelyn, it was only the beginning of a new era. And everyone watching, whether in that store or across the world through viral videos, knew they had witnessed something unforgettable. An elderly woman had walked in as a customer. 15 minutes later, she had walked back as a storm, and she left behind a lesson no one would ever forget. Power isn't in the slap. It's in the strength to rise after it. Calm, steady, and unstoppable.